The executive branch of the Indian government. The executive branch of the Indian government is the one that has sole authority and responsibility for the daily administration of the state bureaucracy. The division of power into separate branches of government is central to the republican idea of the separation of powers. President of India. The executive power is vested mainly in the President of India as per Article 53(1) of the Constitution. The President has all constitutional powers and exercises them directly or through subordinate officers as per the aforesaid Article 53(1). The President is to act in accordance with aid and advice tendered by the Prime Minister, who leads the Council of Ministers as described in Article 74 of the Constitution. The Council of Ministers remains in power during the pleasure of the President. However, in practice, the Council of Ministers must retain the support of the Lok Sabha. If a President were to dismiss the Council of Ministers on his or her own initiative, it might trigger a constitutional crisis. Thus, in practice, the Council of Ministers cannot be dismissed as long as it holds the support of a majority in the Lok Sabha. The President is responsible for appointing many high officials in India. These high officials include the governors of the 28 states, the Chief Justice, other judges of the Supreme Court and High Courts on the advice of other judges, the Attorney General, the Comptroller and Auditor General, the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners, the Chairman and members of the Union Public Service Commission, the officers of the All India Services IAS, IFOS and IPS and Central Civil Services in Group A, and the ambassadors and high commissioners to other countries on the recommendations of the Council of Ministers. The President as the head of state also receives the credentials of ambassadors from other countries, whilst the Prime Minister as head of government receives credentials of high commissioners from other members of the Commonwealth in line with historical tradition. The President is the legally recognized Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Armed Forces. The President of India can grant a pardon to or reduce the sentence of a convicted person once, particularly in cases involving punishment of death. The decisions involving pardoning and other rights by the President are independent of the opinion of the Prime Minister or the Lok Sabha majority. In most other cases, however, the President exercises his or her executive powers on the advice of the Prime Minister. The Vice President of India. The Vice President is the second highest constitutional position in India after the President. The Vice President represents the nation in the absence of the President and takes charge as acting President in the incident of resignation, impeachment or removal of the President. The Vice President also has a legislative function of acting as a Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. The Vice President is elected indirectly by members of an electoral college consisting of the members of both the houses of the Parliament in accordance with the system of proportional representation by means of the single transferable vote, and the voting is by secret ballot conducted by the Election Commission. The Prime Minister of India. The Prime Minister of India, as addressed in the Constitution of India, is the Chief of the Government, Chief Advisor to the President, Head of the Council of Ministers, and the leader of the majority party in the Parliament. The Prime Minister leads the executive of the Government of India. The Prime Minister is the senior member of Cabinet in the executive of government in a parliamentary system. The Prime Minister selects and can dismiss other members of the Cabinet, allocates posts to members within the government, is the presiding member and chairman of the Cabinet, and is responsible for bringing a proposal of legislation. The resignation or death of the Prime Minister dissolves the Cabinet. The Prime Minister is appointed by the President to assist the latter in the administration of the affairs of the executive. The Cabinet, Ministries and Agencies. The Union Council of Ministers includes the Prime Minister, Cabinet Ministers and Ministers of State, or in the short form MOS. Each minister must be a member of one of the houses of the Parliament. The Cabinet is headed by the Prime Minister and is advised by the Cabinet Secretary, who also acts as the head of the Indian Administrative Service and other civil services. Other members of the council are either union cabinet ministers, who are heads of various ministries, or ministers of state, who are junior members who report directly to one of the cabinet ministers, often overseeing a specific aspect of the government, or ministers of state, independent charges, who do not report to a cabinet minister. As per Article 88 of the Constitution, every minister shall have the right to speak in and to take part in the proceedings of either House, any joint sitting of the Houses, and any committee of Parliament of which he may be named a member, but shall not be entitled to a vote in the House where he is not a member. The Secretaries of the Government of India. A Secretary to the Government of India, a civil servant, generally an Indian Administrative Service (IAS) officer, is the administrative head of the ministry or department, and is the principal advisor to the minister on all matters of policy and administration within the ministry or the department. Secretaries to the Government of India rank 23rd on Indian order of precedence. Secretaries at the higher level are assisted by one or many additional secretaries, who are further assisted by joint secretaries. At the middle, they are assisted by directors, deputy secretaries, and under secretaries. At the lower level, there are section officers, assistant section officers, upper division clerks, lower division clerks, and other secretarial staff. The Civil Services of India. The Civil Services of India are the civil services and the permanent bureaucracy of India. The executive decisions are implemented by the Indian civil servants. In the parliamentary democracy of India, the ultimate responsibility for running the administration rests with the elected representatives of the people, which are the ministers. These ministers are accountable to the legislatures, which are also elected by the people on the basis of universal adult suffrage. The ministers are indirectly responsible to the people themselves, but the handful of ministers are not expected to deal personally with the various problems of modern administration. Thus, the ministers lay down the policy, and it is for the civil servants to enforce it. The Cabinet Secretary of India. The Cabinet Secretary is the topmost executive official and senior-most civil servant of the Government of India. The Cabinet Secretary is the head of the Civil Services Board, the Cabinet Secretariat, the Indian Administrative Service (IAS), and head of all civil services under the rules of business of the government. The Cabinet Secretary is generally the senior-most officer of the Indian Administrative Service. The Cabinet Secretary ranks 11th on the Indian order of precedence. The Cabinet Secretary is under the direct charge of the Prime Minister.